Before we share today's episode with you, I just wanted to note that it was recorded before the coronavirus pandemic. It's really hard to believe how much life has changed in such a short time, but here we are. My wish is that this podcast will continue to bring inspiration and hope to your lives. Be well and enjoy.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm so pleased to have you here. Thanks for joining me. It's a lovely day. I hope you're enjoying your day as well. So my name is Sarah Buino, and I'll be your host for today. And I wanted to share with you a couple things. I've named these all this month already, so I'm going to just share them again very briefly. We've got a Patreon where you can donate a little bit of money each month if you enjoy the podcast. We've got Apple Podcast where you can rate and review. We've got Instagram at Head Heart Therapy if you want to hang out on social media, or Facebook at Wounded Healer, and that's WOUNDEDHEALR. Without further ado, let me introduce today's guest. Today's guest is Gregory Koufacos, and he is a certified addiction counselor and recovery coach and founder of Velocity. Velocity is an in-motion approach to capturing the interest and energy of emerging men and mentoring them to healthy, happy, independent lives. And he also has a book that should be coming out shortly. So I really hope you enjoy my interview with Gregory. Hello, Gregory Koufacos. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Did I say it right?
You did.
I win. I am the winner.
You are. You are a winner.
I am a winner. There can be many winners.
No, you're the winner.
Chicken dinner. We digress. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to chat today.
Likewise.
Yeah. So I often like to start telling listeners how I met my guests. And it's people ask all the time, like, how do you find your guests? And I'm like, you know what? They find me. And you and I got to meet at the Cape Cod Symposium for Addictive Disorders.
Yes, at a luncheon.
Right.
That I got invited to at the last second.
Oh, really?
And it was literally a half an hour before lunch. I ran into a friend and she was like, you should come to lunch. We're having just a small, intimate experience. And I went, and it was actually a very eye-opening experience for me because I had been going to that conference for a few years now. And, you know, I feel like I know everybody. But at that luncheon, I only knew the person that invited me and maybe one other person.
Oh, cool.
So it was a real spiritual experience for me to see that no matter how many times you think you know everything and everyone, that's absolutely not true. So yeah, it was great.
Just to kind of piggyback on what you just said, I'd love to get your view on the field of addiction, because I hope that there's a shift. I hope that there's a changing of the guard, because I saw a lot of stuff there that I really was not happy about. So first, I want you to tell people more about who you are and what you do and how you came to be.
Ooh, wow.
Right. So just a very small question.
Yeah, just a little question.
Little baby question.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, but my specialization is in addiction counseling. I came into the field in 2006 as an addiction counselor after my master's program. And I've been in the field of addiction counseling throughout. And I've worked at all of the different what we call levels of care, from acute inpatient, which is like shorter, to 1 month programs, to 6 month, to a year, wilderness, everything. Yes, so that's how I came into the field, and I ended up going my own route, doing my own work. And I naturally settled on working with a very, very specific demographic, which is young men, or what I call emerging men, because they're not men yet. They're emerging. They're trying to emerge from boyhood into manhood. And that would be roughly the ages 16 to 30. And so that's what I do.
Awesome. what made you decide to become an addiction counselor?
I had done a lot of unique things in my life. I had traveled, I had worked a lot of different jobs. When I finally got inspired to grow up and to find a path in my life, I was already getting close to 30 years old. And I knew I didn't want to spend a decade of my life in school.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went into the graduate program, I told the chair of the department, he was a real cool guy. I was like, listen, I'm really interested in psychology and becoming a therapist, but I want the quickest route possible.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, as luck would have it, we have a concentration with working with a population that nobody wants to work with.
Right.
And I said, which one? He said, addiction. I said, I'll do
in.
it. I'm in. Sign me up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my very inglorious beginning. If you were to ask me now why I got into this field, that would be a deeper answer, because I think this is my calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe it will flower into some greater things, through the course of my life. But this was a perfect fit for me. And it was perfect for a variety of reasons. But I think the most important is, when you're working with addiction, you're working with very high stakes.
Yep.
The name of the game is life and death.
Yep.
And that's very good for somebody like me because I'm a very intense person. So my style is extremely off-putting to somebody that's just looking to make a couple of retools in their life. But it's very attractive to somebody who sees that they're on a fast track to an abyss. And I also loved, although this has changed, but addiction counseling was one of the few areas in psychotherapy where you could boldly tackle the concept of spirituality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When I came in the field, I was in these psychology courses, and if you even brought up the word God or spirituality, you were proselytizing.
Right.
And for me, I saw that coming into this awakening of what this universe and what this life really is what it's all about. So this has been my calling. And to the title of your podcast, I have probably healed myself as much, if not more, as the people that I have helped.
Oh, yeah. That is absolutely, I think, necessary. One quick aside, do you know the Enneagram? Because you're a 4, if I have ever heard a 4 before.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I'm going to have to look that up.
I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, real? What about an 8? Because some people say you're an 8.
So the 4 is really all about authenticity, individuality, intensity, deep emotional, it's just, you're a 4. Anyone who says you're an 8, they're dumb.
My wife said that.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding.
She probably knows you better, actually.
No, I'm just kidding. No.
Do look it up, though. I would be very curious.
Will.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it. And so now I'm obsessed with guessing
what are
people's
you?
Numbers. I'm a 3, which is the achiever, the performer. So you have your main number, and then the number on either side, you usually skew towards one or the other, but I pretty equally skew for 2 and 4. So I get the intense emotionality, the desire for authenticity. Clearly, you and I both express ourselves visually in a very unique way.
Yes, we do.
So that's one reason I was like, all right, we're going to vibe. We're going to vibe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I tell you an interesting synchronicity?
Yeah.
Just this past weekend, my brother and I, both my brothers and I actually, we gifted our mother with a weekend retreat with the guy who created the Enneagram.
I thought it was a woman who created it.
I'll have to check later and I'll text it to you. But he was up at this retreat center in Massachusetts. And so she just went up and learned all about it.
Oh, amazing. Well, then ask her what you are.
Because
Because now that she's learned all about it, she'll know.
Yeah. Although your mother sees you
That's true.
in a different light.
That's
and
true.
This is part of when I work with these young men, everybody sees them in a particular light. But when I see them in a different light.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would venture a guess, since you already brought up the topic of spirituality, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. I was having this conversation with a friend last night too, because her dad was a sociopath. My dad was a narcissist with sadistic features. And we were talking about the authentic self versus the way that people just learn to survive, and these adapted survival strategies that then become what a layman would think is the person's personality, right? Like I grew up just thinking my dad was an asshole. And then I went to school, and then I also developed my own spiritual beliefs and recognized like, no, he was just really afraid and really hurting, and something bad happened to him. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but something bad happened to create that false personality, if you will. And so I wonder if that's kind of your belief structure too, and what you're seeing with your clients.
Yeah, definitely. It's certain traits become prominent. They develop armor.
Yep.
Things that they feel protect them, and certain parts of the person become lost or abandoned. And with men, the men that I work with, the young men, that becomes very common. So a lot of what we're doing is reintegrating or rediscovering parts of them that either they had abandoned long ago or they never even knew that it existed.
Is that a personal journey that you were on as well?
Oh, definitely. I had and I was going to say too, because I can relate to your journey with your father, not to put any labels on my father per se, but I think we all go through this. But one thing you learn as you mature in life is you see how difficult life is. And you see that how hard it is to raise a family, to maintain a marriage, to keep your body, mind, and spirit healthy decade after decade. So you develop more understanding for what those who went before you have gone through. But for me, yes, I definitely cut off a lot of parts of myself. And fortunately, I have acquired this hunger to seek out and find all of who I am. That particular part of my journey is something that the young men that I work with really feed off of, that they see that I am single focused and fearless in that mission. And they say, well, if he's willing to do it and showing how he does it, then it's okay for me to do it.
Are you fearless, or you just really have a really good relationship with your fear?
That's a great question. I think, and this is part of what happened to me in my life, I have a character trait, which is confidence. And sometimes my confidence is so big that it cancels out my fear. But that's not the same as really working through fear. So one of the things I've learned to do is to tone down my confidence so I can hear within myself when I am scared and when I can label fear as fear.
Right.
Because you've heard the common men hide their fear with anger. I am very guilty, or that's something that can happen to me. The anger comes so quick that I'm not able to see that I'm really scared of something. So to answer your question, I would like to say I am a very confident, driven person that sometimes drives right through fear, but I'm learning how to really work with fear.
Yeah, because otherwise it's a bypass, right?
It is.
Like, and it's part of, I can relate to that as well, being a very confident person, always putting myself out there, and, people would perceive me as fearless, and
right. And we're not.
Right. The way I would describe it for me is that probably like I will jump, and then I don't start feeling the fear until I'm like halfway through the free fall, and I'm like, holy shit, that was crazy. Why didn't I think about that before I jumped? And then I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm scared shitless.
Yeah, you're a warrior. And
yeah.
As warriors, we end up in battles. And it's something about us that there is a tendency to move too fast.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of that was growing up too quickly. I felt like I had to rely on myself.
Yes,
So
yes. Oh.
that's been a lot of the journey, is to slow down and really feel life instead of rushing through it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And you either are writing or you have written a book, right?
Yeah,
Is it going to come out soonish?
It is. We're going to be done with it by the end of the year. I'm going to be done, and we're looking to publish in early spring of 2020.
Oh, good.
It's taken me a little over 3 years to write it, and it is documenting this method that I use to reach this emerging male audience. And what I've found about why that audience is unique and why typical or traditional therapies are in themselves not sufficient. And statistically, they are not really working with that population. So that's what the book is about.
Very cool. And I think, too, we're at a very interesting time in history where, like it or not, people are mad about dudes taking shit over and fucking it up. And there's a rise of, the divine feminine and whatever you want to call it. And the thing that's interesting is, I think more often than not, people who are in the field are women, right? And so we then have a propensity to working with women and trying to empower women and whatnot. And yet, unless the men are actually taught to take ownership and agency of their own healing and their own process and their own reactions to what happens if, a woman steps in and takes your power away from you. Because just recently in Chicago, a woman was killed because she didn't respond to a man's cat call, right? Like, that's horrifying and terrifying. And someone needs to be working with these men to recognize, how do you tolerate the discomfort of not getting your way? Because that's where the future is headed. And I am really glad that someone's doing that work.
Yeah. And that's a big part of the process, is teaching men, and us as a tribe of men, teaching each other and teaching ourselves that we cannot take what we want. We have to earn and work, and there's a collaboration with the divine feminine, with the female, with the earth. We can't keep just taking. It's about getting into a relationship, the male and the female. And the men that I work with are really shut down. They don't know the process of really getting into that relationship with life and with themselves. And that's why they get so stuck. And that's where addictions become big. But this is now, having written the book now, I see that this is certainly a national phenomenon at every age. So I meet 50-year-old, 60-year-old, quote unquote, men. They have not matured a day over 15.
Right.
And if that's the males that are the teachers and mentors, then the young guys have no hope.
Exactly. i.e., look at Congress.
Right. Yeah.
And our president, like, good God. Yeah.
You can look at all throughout life. But, my aim is not to diagnose life or to criticize any particular field, like politics or religion, or it's merely to walk a path and allow and be on that path with other emerging men and other men. And that journey is such a beautiful challenge and such an arduous challenge that to take your focus off of that and to look at what others are doing or what's going on in the world, there's just not an option. It's such a steep climb that we're doing. And I see that if I continue on the road that I'm on, I'm able to impact other young men.
Right.
And then me. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a movement.
Yeah. And then they get to support other people who come behind them. So yeah, I think that's when I get overwhelmed with the macro and the bigger picture stuff. I just try to remember that, like, I get to work with students who are then going to become therapists who get to impact clients. I get to impact clients who then impact people in their lives. And that's just the best that I can do.
That's exactly right. And that's hard enough and good enough.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Tell my childhood wounds that they won't listen, but right. Because it's my job to fix the world, Gregory. Like, duh.
You have that job, eh?
Oh, yeah. And it is fucking heavy as shit.
Yeah. Well, you're tuned into, a lot of people have this direct intuition, or they tune into the state of life. And it's heavy. The title of your podcast, this Wounded Healer, comes, I think, from Jung, right? And Jung was somebody who had that direct sense. And he went through horrible bouts of depression through the world wars and seeing what people were doing and capable of. So,
yeah. Well, that does beg the question then, do you consider yourself a healer?
You know, it's interesting. I know there was a question, I think, on your website or something about that. Do I consider myself a healer? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I think sometimes I do when I have great sessions, right? And I'm like skipping through the streets,
right?
You know, and I'm thinking, I am a healer.
Yeah.
And then when I suck, I say, I am a loser.
Right.
I feel like I am where I'm supposed to be. You know, we broke a chair to our dining set, and I took it to this local guy, and he said, I am a furniture doctor. Okay.
Oh, I love that.
His warehouse was just beautiful. It was like the North Pole of furniture, you know, like little this and that. And he worked with his father from the time he was 10 years old, and this guy is probably close to 70. So I feel like my work is with the psyche. It's with the soul. That is what I do. So in that sense, I am where I'm supposed to be. If you look at my work with men, then probably I have the capacity to be a part of a healing process, because the men that I'm working with are making dramatic transformations. They're going from one extreme of just depression and isolation and addiction and powerlessness to a path that is really going somewhere in life, and they feel good about it, and they are independent and happy. So I would say more than healer, I'm probably transformer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
If I knew the Transformers theme song, I would sing it right now, but I don't.
The Transformers, more than meets the eyes.
Yes.
The Transformers.
Yes.
Robots in disguise.
Oh my God. Yes. I just kept thinking the She-Ra theme song for whatever reason. Clearly my brother was watching Transformers. I was watching She-Ra.
Yes.
That's so great. I love that though. And I'm curious because you consider yourself a coach, right?
A mentor.
Okay, a mentor. And did you choose that title because you're stepping into more of a spiritual realm?
Yeah, I think it was to distinguish between what I do is so different from what I guess I'm not going to say typical, but what most therapy approaches are.
Right.
And I have respect for all of those therapy approaches, by the way. And most of the emerging men that I work with end up working with more traditional therapy. Okay. But what I do is so different. And I view it as a more mythological journey rather than pathological, you know. So I felt like a coach, that field has been pretty well defined, but I felt like mentor was the best term for what I'm doing.
Yeah. And you've already mentioned, you know, the term wounded healer a couple of times. Do you identify with that label?
Definitely. Everything comes through the wounds and the openings that I've had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything. That's what enables me. I'm very grateful for the wounds that I have acquired in my life. And I see now how those wounds were openings to something greater.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that at the time. And when they recrop up, and they get the best of me, I am frustrated and scared. And there are periods of that as well. But I can see that without these wounds, I certainly would not be on this path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this got me very interested in who am I really? And what are we really? And why are we here?
Yeah, I feel like at least what I'm finding for myself right now, I'm in the midst of doing this pretty intensive trauma training, and I just had the realization recently that, oh, I'm in this trauma training and that means I'm also doing my trauma work. That's why I feel so crazy.
Yes.
Thanks. And so the thing that I'm bumping up against is there's a shift right now where we're really being called to step out of binary labels for things and a binary understanding of the way that things work. And yet our brains, that's how we make sense of the world. And I keep hearing the message in so many different places and areas of my life that, yes, we need our wounds. And, a lot of the conversations on this podcast is people talking about, learning from their wounds and using those in their work rather than being used by the wound. And yet there's still a deep part of me that is like, fuck this shit. I don't want to have pain anymore. I'm fucking tired of it.
That's right. And I will tell you that one thing that I found working with these emerging men, the typical course of therapy when you come in with the problems that the guys that I work with have, people target straight to the pain. They imagine that if they go to the pain and they work on the pain and the pain diminishes, then these men will grow. But to your point, we carry these for a lifetime. See? So I found that when 20-year-old young man comes to me, I do not take them to the pain. Rather, I want to immediately start to work with them and mentor them and move alongside life with them to lead them and to go on a path of victory. I want them to feel what it feels like to win.
Right.
And when they do that, see, there's the beginning of the podcast. You're a winner. They want to feel what it feels like to win. And if you win enough times and you keep a certain humility and perspective about that, you get strong enough to tackle the wounds. So it's a question of order. So I have found a lot more success I don't talk to these men about their feelings and their fears. And it's just about bonding with them and moving on a path of success.
One thing that I've really been thinking a lot about in the past couple years in my own spiritual journey is, from a psychological standpoint, we need to build ego strength with our clients first. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And then from a spiritual perspective, once we have that ego strength, then we begin the unwinding and the unlearning and the letting go of that in order to move to deeper spiritual levels. And that's something that I found with my clients too. And if we're trying to just bypass and not have the ego at all, our clients who don't have that foundation, they're going to crumble. And of course, they're going to continue to go back to using substances because
Of course. Of course. Exactly. Duh. That shit is painful.
Right.
And the ego is going to need relief. Forget about, that there's a choice in the matter. It is going to missile seek for something that can give it relief. But like I said, after working with these men for amount of time, they do become strong enough and ready to seek out that deeper healing, which includes facing their pain.
Right. Well, and that kind of leads to, we started off and I said I might want to talk about kind of industry stuff. I feel like in Chicago, we actually have a really good addiction community, and I feel pretty confident sending people to most treatment centers. Like I at least know somebody in every treatment center who I think is awesome is going to like take care of my clients for me. And what I saw at CSAD and the more that I understand the national world of addiction, the more things I see that I don't like. And the thing that I see the most that gets in the way of really good treatment is ego. And the ego of these treatment centers, the ego of the people that run them, the lack of doing your own depth work. Because if you're not doing your own work, of course your ego is going to get in the way. And talking about like this emerging man kind of category, like I see so much of that person representing treatment centers, and I'm not into that. I'm so not into that. And I really hope that the Good Old Boys Club just starts recognizing that nobody wants to be sold a treatment center. I want to feel that this treatment center is going to love and care for my client the same way that I do. I have a client who I'm trying to get into treatment right now. And so I'm having a lot of different conversations with these marketing folks. And the ones who want to sell me, I'm like, I don't even want to talk to you. Just give me your clinical person because you're not speaking my language. So I don't know what you're seeing since you're also on a national scale.
Listen, this field of addiction recovery has gone through the most profound alterations in the last decade. And part of that is because of the influx of money. And that's because of the growing number of people that are needing and seeking treatment.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any statistics about how many more people are seeking treatment or how many more rehabs there are, but I can just tell you from like a kind of a common sense, this is what it was like 10 years ago and this is what it's like now.
Yeah.
There's been just a lot of influx of more providers, and it's no longer just a few big places that you can go. It's a lot of different things, and people are very desperate. When you're desperate, you look out for a lifeline. So I think it's just a very unique time in this field.
Yeah. I mean, things have already been crashing and burning in different areas. And I, again, kind of the back to this idea of the wound, like, right, the wounds of our industry, we need to be learning from them instead of acting from them. And I hope that continues to shift.
Well, and you said something. You said maybe a lot of people, you're wondering how much depth work are they doing? And we have always known in this field, you can only take a person as far as you yourself have gone.
Right.
So once your journey stops and you start to regress, it limits your ability to take people on this journey. It's an interesting question to think about and for people to think about as they're in this work. How much of my own work am I doing?
Right. And then, what gets in the way of that? I mean, when I'm starting to do now wounded healer seminars, the things that get in the way of it for people, it's fear. And we talked about that earlier. Like, I feel like I do have a different relationship to fear than most people do. I think that there's some of us that really just take it and run with it. And a lot of people just can't come at it that way. And one of the things I want to do is just like inspire and support people to take that step, because the pain and the fear is just getting in the way of helping as many people as we can.
I'm with you. I share that journey. I love to inspire other professionals in our field how to take on their own journey. And I found working with these emerging men that the single greatest thing I can offer them is my journey.
Right, exactly.
That actually gets imparted to them through some mirror neuron osmosis. I don't know what it is, but the work that you do on yourself as a professional, as a parent, that impacts the person that you're quote unquote trying to help more than a lecture or a technique.
Right. Well, do you want to share with folks where they can find out more about your work and connect with you?
The best place to see what we're doing is through our website, which is velocitymentoring.com. And, that has links to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then keep a lookout for the book, which is going to be out, it looks like in late March, which is called The Primal Method. And that will be a resource for emerging men and for really anybody who works with or loves these young men.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you too. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gregory. I really appreciated that conversation. It was wonderful. To learn more about Gregory, you can find information at www.headhearttherapy.com/podcast. Thanks as always to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for editing, to Liam O'Donnell for the album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. Until next time, bye-bye.